Hey guys, I thought I would make another one of these videos before I go to bed tonight. It's like 12:24. My voice is a little bit hoarse because I just got done trying to film one of my ghost story narrations, and not only, as usual, that I have to start over a bunch of times, but the editing I couldn't seem to get right. I think I finally get it right, but it's a pain in the butt. That's the problem with having to stop and start and not recording it the whole way, is I have to piece all the little files together. It's so annoying. Oh my god, and my mouth, like my teeth are pretty sore right now from chewing this gum, but I figured I might as well knock this video out while I still got the gum in. Okay, so one of the movies I thought I'd talk about today is the movie Heavyweights. Some of you are probably familiar with it, some of you not. It was a movie that came out in 1995, and it was about a group of kids that were being sent to fat camp. And the fat camp was run by Ben Stiller's crazy character named Tony Perkis. And the kids were excited about going to camp because they were under the impression that it would still be the really nice previous owners, but it was something like they were given an offer they couldn't refuse, so they had to sell it, or something like that. So Ben Stiller's character basically tortured these kids to try to get them to lose weight, because he wanted them to be, he basically was trying to make an infomercial for his weight loss system called the Perkis system, because he was a fat kid when he was younger and he lost weight, and now he's obsessive and he wants to make money off of it, so he was really nasty to the kids. So basically the movie's about the fat kids being harassed by him and being harassed by a neighboring sporty camp. Oh, you hear the kitty. Betty, stop. Some of the kids that were in it should be familiar. I'm not sure how to pronounce that. Sean Weiss. He played Goldberg in the Mighty Ducks movies. Betty, stop it. He looks a lot different now. But yeah, he was the overweight goalie in the Mighty Ducks movies. And this kid, Aaron Schwartz, right here, now looking at his picture, you would never know that he was a chunky kid. Never know. But he played the main character. Right here, named Gerald, or Jerry as they called him. So you can see Goldberg right there. He looked a lot different then. And he was also in the first Mighty Ducks movie, but he wasn't in any of the sequels. And then Kenan Thompson from, now you'd know him from Saturday Night Live, but a lot of us 80s and 90s kids would know him from All That and Good Burger and this movie. So yeah, this kid is definitely no longer overweight. But yeah, I really related to this movie in a way because I was overweight when I was younger. Obviously, I'm overweight now. I went through a couple of periods in my life where I wasn't overweight, but this period right here was not one of them. So even though I was a girl and not a boy like these guys, I could relate to the movie and appreciate it. You know, there's a couple different levels that go along with that. Like, I could laugh at it because at the beginning of the movie, when the main character is walking to his bus, he walks by a ball field and the baseball goes over the fence and lands in front of his feet, and they ask him to toss it back to them, and he keeps trying to toss it over the fence and it keeps falling back down at his feet till finally he just drops it down, and everybody's looking at him like, come on kid, what the heck? And that's so relatable to me because I'm like, yep, that's my life right there. And then he misses his bus and all the kids in the back are making fun of him. Like, it's, you can laugh at it, even though it's sad, you can laugh at it because, you know, you had to have a sense of humor about being overweight. It's really hard to explain because there were parts that were funny because they were relatable, and there were parts that were depressing because they were relatable. I don't know, it's really hard to explain. I think it's one of those things where it's important to laugh at yourself so I could appreciate the movie because these kids came out on top. So, yeah. Anywho, let's see. Okay, I'm gonna switch gears here for something funny. Well, not funny, but kind of weird. This movie right here, The Sandlot, a lot of you have probably heard of. It's about a bunch of kids in 1962 playing baseball. James Earl Jones is in it. The reason I want to talk about this movie is because I suffer from something called emetophobia, which is when you kind of have a panic disorder about vomiting. But mine is not the same as, I've never been diagnosed with this. I self-diagnosed myself with it. You know, but when I read a website about it, people, you know, it sounded exactly like me. I read the forums, it was exactly like me, except I only have a freak out when other people do it. Like if my son does it in the house, you know, and he happens to not be able to make it to the toilet, I'm grossed out, but I can clean it up. If we were in a vehicle and he did it, I would have a complete meltdown panic attack. If my husband were to get sick in front of me, I would have a complete meltdown panic attack. But a lot of people with emetophobia, Betty, stop it. A lot of people with emetophobia are only afraid of vomit because they're afraid they're gonna catch something and get sick and die. That's not me. I'm not afraid of becoming ill and dying. I'm not afraid of catching anything. I just cannot stand the sound or the smell of vomit. When I was younger, my sister went through this phase. I was probably like, God, how old was I? I was probably like 14 or something like that. And my sister was, let's see, probably like 7 or 8. She went through this anxiety phase where all of a sudden we could not get 5 minutes down the road without her claiming that she was going to be car sick. And it got to the point where I did not want to ride with her. I did not want to go anywhere with them if she was going to ride with us, because she would bring a plastic bag and she would be sick in it. And I was having a complete meltdown, getting the shakes, crying, panic attack, and I would get yelled at because it looked like I was just being a mean, nasty, selfish brat and not feeling bad for my sister who was getting sick. But I couldn't help it, and I still can't help it. Like, I would rather, this sounds morbid, but I would rather get in a plane crash than sit next to somebody who is violently throwing up on an airplane and not being able to get away from them because you can't just step outside of an airplane. It's always my worst fear when I fly, is being near someone that's going to be airsick. You know, of course I have fears about being sick in public, like throwing up in public, but I can handle throwing up myself at home. It's just seeing and hearing other people do it. Like, I have a weak stomach like that, I guess, and a panic disorder about that particular thing. Anyway, I had to mention that because this movie right here is one of 3 movies that I have to fast forward or change the channel through a particular scene. In this movie, there's a famous scene that people think is just hilarious if they're not me, where the boys think they'll be clever, and I believe they smoke a bunch of cigars, and then they get on one of those, I think it's kind of similar to the Thunderbolt, where it goes really fast forward and then really fast backwards, and basically they're all throwing up all over each other, and I just can't. Another movie like that has a similar scene that I have to change the channel on would be, sorry if you're hearing cat noises in the background, they come alive at night for some reason, would be Stand By Me. Awesome movie, one of the best movies. Great acting. Probably honestly Corey Feldman's best movie. But, and of course River Phoenix, rest in peace. Gone too young. But there's a scene, I think it's Will Wheaton. I can't remember, only because I usually change it. It tells a story about an overweight kid who's entered into a blueberry pie eating contest, and you can guess what happens, so I'm not going to mention it. But yes, I have to fast forward through that scene. Then the third movie would be the sequel to the movie Problem Child. If you don't know what Problem Child is, it was a movie where John Ritter, also rest in peace, and his wife wanted to adopt a child, and they ended up with a redheaded boy that's, hey, stop it, cats, that really likes to misbehave. And in the second movie, John Ritter is divorced, I believe. But basically, bottom line, there's like a carnival scene that again has to do with a ride going haywire. And not only do the people on it get sick, but the people in the crowd walking around the carnival who witness it get sick, and it's just bad. It is just bad. On a lighter note, completely unrelated, this movie right here, The Last Unicorn, I believe we must have gotten this on VHS tape in the 80s, and I watched it constantly. Even as of the last, like, 10 or so years, I watched it quite a bit, but it's very, like, emotionally intense for me, though. Like, I get too sad when it's over. So it's hard for cats. It's hard for me to watch. But it's basically about a unicorn who believes that she's the last one because she's not seen another unicorn in a really long time. But then she finds out that there are unicorns other than her, but they're being held captive. And she basically goes on a journey to find them. And it's a really good movie. And she's a really pretty unicorn. I have this other tab open up here. It's stuck, I guess. Let's see. Oh, here we go. I have the Mighty Ducks 2 open. I wasn't going to talk about it, but it pops up every time I open up IMDb. It's because it's one of those movies that, even though it's not an awesome, great movie, whenever it's on, I still watch it. Kind of like Sister Act 2. If it's on, I'm gonna watch it, even though they're not, like, amazing award-winning content. I still watch it. And, like, this movie never really made sense to me, because I didn't think, even though they won in the first movie, I really didn't think that they were good enough hockey players. At least Gordon Bombay's players were good enough to make the American Goodwill Games team. You know, some of the players that they bring on to add seem like they'd be good, but it just didn't make sense. Cats, don't fight under me, please. It just didn't make sense that they'd, you know, I don't know, I just didn't think that some of the kids from the first Mighty Ducks movie were good enough to make, like, an Olympic type team, but I don't know, it's a movie. These cats are nuts. It's really weird that Emilio Estevez just didn't have a whole lot going on, like, acting-wise after these movies. I think he directed a lot of things, but I don't know. Here's Shameless here in the background. I really do like that show. Game of Thrones starts up again in April. Kind of bummed because I thought it was March that they started up again. Ooh, A Little Giants. Let's talk about that if I have enough time. Does anyone remember this movie? Where a bunch of ragtag kids that weren't good enough to make the local football team started their own football team. And Rick Moranis, and Ed O'Neill played brothers in the movie, and they both coached the teams. That was a really good movie. It was cute. Of course, this movie had Devon Sawa in it. I'm not sure I pronounced that right, but he's well known for being the voice. Well, actually, I don't know if he was the voice of Casper or if he only played Casper as a human for like a minute and a half in the movie, but he's known for that. Now and Then. Oh, what? The Eminem video where he's Stan. Oh God, what is? No, Final Destination, probably most well known. Yeah, he's been in a lot. Yeah, I liked this movie. This is another one that I'd probably watch if it was on. My son played football last year in 8th grade. It's the first year he'd ever played football, and it was very similar to Little Giants because football is not, we now live in Texas, but last year we lived in Maine, and just football is just not really a huge thing out there. So this was done through the local YMCA, and just the kids were all different sizes, just like on Little Giants. There were little tiny kids, you know, kids like my son who were tall and gangly. You know, they were all in 7th and 8th grade, but they were just, I don't know, there was only like 14 of them. So they had to cancel a couple of games because there's just not enough of them where they could play with the whole game without getting hurt. It was really a bummer because my son loved it, but there just wasn't enough kids, so we didn't really have as many games as we would have liked. Then we get out here probably a month into school, and football had already been going on, and he kind of wasn't really interested in trying to play out here because it's Texas, and these kids have probably been playing football since they were like toddlers, so it's a little more intense out here. But yeah. Alrighty. I'm gonna end this now, and I'll talk to you later.